Femi Aratokun and Bish Johnson are both security experts for many years. Gentlemen, want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on this platform. You've been watching the recent developments from Kaduna State where the bombings happened. We understand that over 80 persons were killed in that accident. They term it accident. I'm not really sure what your views are about that, but they call it a mistake, to be precise, by the Nigerian military. Let me start with you, Femi. You are there in the UK. You've been watching events as they unfold here in Nigeria, and this is just about a week since that incident happened. What was your first impression when you heard about this mistake?
In Nigeria, I'm not going to call this a mistake, and I'm not going to call this a good thing to happen in Nigeria, despite the whole investments claimed to bandits and terrorism in Nigeria today. And before we start this program, let us first know and get our facts right that as far back as 2014 up to date, we've had at least not less than 14 airstrike, mistakenly, targeted at wrong places. So if we have 13 before, with this one now making it 14th one, I don't think we should call something else a mistake. And I think the military and the whole country's security architecture should look straight into themselves and ask a question. Are we actually doing the right thing or the wrong thing? If it's the wrong thing, I think probably right now, the chief of army staff should be called up from his office and talk to him that, you know what, you're not fit for purpose in this very office, because we do not need and we don't have to make mistakes, because it's costing lives and it's costing money and it's equally costing the image of our security globally as we speak.
Bish, very quickly, you heard what Femi said. Are you in line with that, or what are your thoughts when you first heard about that bombing? It was a drone strike, we understand, and people who are civilians, they were just going about their duties, celebrating the Eid al-Maulud festival, and they were mistaken, according to the military, they were mistaken to be a terrorist cell, and then they launched that bombings on them. What are your thoughts?
Okay, yeah, Gilbert, thank you for having me on this program. At first, when I heard it was Nigerian Army, I was taken aback because I know Nigerian Army does not have air component. Most of the time when this kind of incidents have taken place in Nigeria, it has always been the Nigerian Air Force because that is the organization that is constitutionally empowered for territorial protection of and defense of Nigeria by air. And so when the army said that they took responsibility for the attack, I was taken aback until they came out and said, look, it was a drone attack. It was at that point that we now became aware that now the Nigerian army is now running a drone component in their organization. Now, when that incident happened, and they say it was the army, it was a drone attack. The first thing that came to my mind is what was the level of training and experience of soldiers flying drones in Nigeria? Because flying drone is the same thing as flying an aircraft. Okay, you have to have experience. You have to have the required training to be able to do that. So I don't know the level of that training. I don't know how much experience that the operators have. I don't know how those tactical decisions are made. There's supposed to be a command and control center where whatever the drone is feeding the center, there will be multiple people that will be looking at it. It wouldn't be an issue of one-man decision. It has to be a collective decision. But ultimately, the highest ranking officer in that command and control has to be the one that will issue the final order for the trigger to be pulled. So I don't know how the process of decision-making in this thing. That is one aspect. And then another aspect is the intelligence. That could have been a faulty intelligence. I don't know what sorts of intel the army used in making the determination that there was a threat, and that threat needed to be responded, and it needed to be responded quickly. Otherwise, it's usually soldiers that will call in for close air support. And usually when soldiers call in for close air support, it's because they have identified the threat to be real threat. And then they will send in a coordinate. And the Air Force or the air component will now use that coordinate to respond to the threat accordingly. So I don't know, the nitty-gritty of what is happening. But I am
but Johnson, let me just quickly butt in there. In your experience, there is a strategy and there is always a procedure to take before an order is given. In this case, from whose office or on whose table does it rest for such an order to be given in Nigeria?
That is what I'm saying, is because, I am speaking now from the perspective of an outsider. I don't know what processes the Nigerians, but there's always a command. Always a commander that is usually in charge of every component. If the Nigerian Army now has drone component, it rests on the shoulders of that commander, who will be a higher up a chain of command, to issue that final order for trigger to be pulled. So I don't know how they are structured. That's what I'm trying to say. But normally, since they have a drone component, that drone component ought to have a commander. And that commander is the one who makes the decision as to when to pull the trigger and drop the armament. So that is the way it's supposed to be. So
let me get back to you very quickly, because just looking at those visuals of the the National Security Advisor who visited Ground Zero just a few days back, about 2 days ago. He visited Ground Zero and he made a promise. He said that it will be investigated, and then that was all he said. He didn't say if those who are investigated and then found culpable of this, call it criminal act, if you will, or negligence or a mistake, as the army puts it. What more do you expect from the NSA at this point?
We've done a lot already.
Thank you for this question, and it's a very critical one, and that a lot of Nigerians want to have answers to. At least it's more clear right now that yes, a drone attack was actually activated and carried out in Kaduna State. However, based on what they could put as their defense, that Igabi is so close to the Nigerian Air Force area, so they had to coordinate themselves and carry out what we call intel multiple attacks if need be. But the question, just like what Bishop said, again, I'm going to support his motion that how come do we start having failed intel every time? Does that simply mean that training are not put together very well, or we're actually not investing well into security training to our military and naval forces and air forces, men and women in Nigeria anymore? So you can tell right now that we have a failed security architecture in Nigeria, and no one seems to be taking responsibilities for things like this. So it is a very bad thing. Again, let me give you another point to it. Can Nigerians be honest and transparent enough to what? We're going to bring out what we call the forensic analysis of how this raid was actually carried out. At least for openness, for clarity, for people to have closure to this, a lot of transparent, how do I put it, analysis must definitely be carried out and shown to the world. That here we have, this is what we have. Does that simply mean that we're having drones that are not clear enough to actually identify things on ground, or we're just playing Russian roulette with lives and property in Nigeria? These are things we want to talk about, and it has to be well handled. NSA seems to have a lot to do, but we should not play politics with lives, despite the fact that we have been ravaged all along from as far as in the 90s till now with security issues. This shouldn't be one of the key things we should be talking about.
Femi, let me just ask you point blank. Do you think this was a mistake?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not going to call this a mistake. I'm going to call this one a very serious genocide in a way, because this is occurring again, second time in Kaduna within some few, I mean, God knows how many months in between. So to me, it's logically not a mistake. How do you call this a mistake? How do you call this a mistake? In the first place, they have intel. And even if they have intel, they should get their intel right, because they want the air support to attack first. So it is never a mistake. I think from my own point of view,
Bishop,
the president and all chief of staff must call themselves and, pull the shot where it's meant to be, that, you know what, this office is not fit for purpose. We need to overhaul. We need to change things. We need to change our strategy.
let me butt in here again. I'm sorry. Bishop, do you think this was a mistake?
Well, see, Gimba, having served in the armed forces, right, and I haven't had the experience, I do know that when you have an ongoing operation, if you have ongoing operation in which, airmen, soldiers, and sailors are constantly engaged in operation, mistakes do happen. The problem with this particular mistake is because it has been one mistake too many times. From what I have gathered, there have been repeated incidences like this for more than 17 times. And to me, it doesn't seem like Nigeria has learned any lessons from those previous experiences. And I am not surprised. I'm not surprised because this is a country that never learned from its mistakes. No matter the number of investigations or inquiries that they do, they don't learn from any mistake. We saw it when the girls from Chibok were kidnapped. It wasn't long ago. The ones from in Yobe, Dapchi, got kidnapped. And up to now, they are still kidnapping students. Yes, Nigeria doesn't seem to have learned any lesson and put measures in place. So so it could be a mistake. I don't know. That's why there has to be proper investigation. And that investigation has to be independent. That is, if we are truly, truly honest and we are truly interested in finding out why these kind of incidences are occurring, we must not play politics with it. We should allow this investigation to go on independently and comprehensively so that they can find out where we are getting it wrong in these instances, whether it is training or equipment or faulty intelligence, whatever it is. The investigation ought to reveal it so that we can put measures in place. If it's as a result of flagrant disregard of laid down regulations and procedures, because every situation in the military, there's a standard operating procedure that you have to follow to do that. We have to look at whether these people flagrantly disregarded standard operating procedures. In that case, they should be held culpable, for flagrantly disregarding laid down procedures. But other than that, the investigation ought to let us know whether it was an accident or not. It will be speculation if I tell you from my own perspective, not being an insider, not knowing exactly what happened, that it wasn't an accident. And from the information we're getting from the composition of the people who were affected, it seems that there are multiple tribes, multiple people of religious backgrounds that were affected in this particular incident. So we cannot say that it's a genocide because they didn't target any one particular group. However, I don't want to preempt the investigation. Let the investigation reveal the facts if we are actually going to conduct a true independent investigation. That's where my problem is. My problem is our ability to conduct an independent, comprehensive investigation in which we are going to take all the factors into consideration and take necessary measures that will put in place so that similar incidences will not be occurring again in this country.
Gentlemen, I know that you are vast in this security space and you've had years of experience about it. Let me ask you again, Bish Johnson, considering the gravity of what has happened, some postulations have come up to say that this could be rooted to political lineation, in which case, to clearly spell it out, the Muslim ticket may be a problem that still hasn't gone down well with some elements in Nigeria. What do you think? Is that a possibility?
Most people that died in this incident are Muslims, right? They were celebrating their Muslim festival when this attack took place. So you see, this is one of those conspiracies. See, anytime things happen, there will always be conspiracies. People will come up with different notions and different speculations, because emotions are running high. The majority of the people that are killed in this attack are Muslims because it was their festival that was targeted, right? So I wouldn't draw that conclusion that is because of the Muslim ticket. Therefore, that's why Muslims went and killed their fellow Muslims, or that's why Christians, went and killed Muslims who were celebrating. We don't know who were the operators of that drone until those people are made public and we know which faith they belong to. We can't draw that conclusion. That is why it is very, very important that an independent and a comprehensive and unbiased investigation is carried out so that the facts of this incident will come out. We can't solve these problems with speculations. We can't solve these problems by, injecting our own opinions into what has transpired. The only way this problem can be permanently resolved and resolved effectively and truthfully is through investigation, an independent investigation that will bring out the facts of the incident.
Femi, thank you for just being patient with me for staying so long with Bish Johnson. Uh, in your view, Femi, how critical is it for the security apparatus in Nigeria, the army, the air force, the navy, and even some other paramilitary establishments? How critical is it for them to have a synergized approach to any issues concerning training or even a kinetic move against the enemy?
The question you asked me will bring me back to, let me say, 10 years ago or 14 years ago or 15 years ago when we met. You are actually one of the very first news anchor that actually gave me some interview about Nigeria and my mission in Nigeria years ago. And you can tell from that year up till date, nothing seems to have changed. Presently, as far back as yesterday, barely 24 hours ago, I was still conducting training program for the man o' war. This time around, man o' war in Nigeria via Zoom. Now, I am equally in connection with the Nigerian criminology students presently in conducting series of training programs for them. Not leaving behind the Nigerian police, not leaving behind the civil defense corps in Nigeria, whereby I give out training worth of millions of naira for free, not at a dime. And I'm not equally asking the government to, like, you know what, I need this from you or that. I provide everything, all my logistics from UK down to Nigeria to deliver training program, even to the extent of going down to the Nigerian Police College in Ikeja to deliver stuffs in terms of training and supporting their ideas together. And I can tell you, just like what Bishop said, independent investigation is not going to happen because as far back as 2014, how many investigations have they actually carried out and people are, put together to account for it? It's never happened. So politics, when it comes to investigation, will definitely play a part, and we're not going to see the light out of this. So it is not going to surprise me. So in conclusion to what Bishop said, I personally can equally say I am deeply rooted into what goes around when it comes to how they conduct their investigation materials, logistics, and a whole lot of things being used in Nigeria today. It's not really fruitful and it's not coming up well. Perhaps money have seemed not to be well invested into it, or some certain set of people are actually just pocketing these resources to themselves, leaving behind our national priorities, our personnel to just look like funny clowns to the world, to the global stage as well. But the reality is this, and I want Bishop to please shed light on this, especially when it comes to our personnel. They really want to work. But the question is who are those people commanding them not to actually carry out their work effectively the way they should? A lot of people reach out to me and they tell me their hearts and minds. They want to do this stuff, but they don't have the materials. Sometimes they have the materials, but they are being compelled by what you call the control and order that, you know what, I give the order, don't call the shot. Whatever I say goes, and that is how it's going to be. And with the level of what we have today, I can tell you for free that we're not going to have a proper investigation, and this is how it's going to slide again, and we start counting until when, we don't know.
Bishop, what's your response? He's asking you a question.
Yes. You know, the military is a microsome of Nigeria. And you know that Nigeria, you know our country. Nigeria is a very highly corrupt country. And so there's corruption in every facet of Nigerian system, including the armed forces. And so most of the monies that is being budgeted, even though it's not enough, you know, because I have compared the budget of Nigerian military per capita with even our neighboring countries. Per capita, even our neighboring countries are making more investment in their armed forces than we are, because we are much more bigger country than most of all these countries. So we're expected to budget more than them. But even at that, the little one that is being budgeted are not being utilized effectively and properly. They're not going to where they're supposed to go. You know, recently the army court-martialed one of their own, in which they found him guilty of misappropriation and embezzlement in the tune of hundreds of billions of naira, you know. So I am not surprised that they are not, the soldiers, the foot soldiers themselves are not getting the required training, and they're not getting the required equipment that they need in carrying out their duties. So it is not a surprise. It's not a surprise. So, but that's what this investigation ought to unravel. Whether there were shortfalls in training, in equipment, in manpower, whatever the case is.
But do you share the same thoughts with Femi that nothing is going to come out of this investigation? It's not the first time, it will not be the last time.
I stated it earlier that my fear is the investigation. That Nigeria has carried out countless number of investigations, which at the end of the day, nothing comes out of. Femi, there was an investigation that was done on NDDC at the National Assembly. I was there. I presented papers. Up to date, nobody has heard anything about that National Assembly investigation on NDDC. It has died. And so many other investigations that have taken place in this country, that at the end of the day, the outcome of those investigations are not made public. And recommendations of those investigations are not even implemented, which is where we are today. In 2014, there was a national conference in which over 600 recommendations were made on how to better this country. That 2014 confab report is collecting dust. There was OYS report on how to fix Nigeria. That report is also collecting dust. There was one that was led by the former governor of Kaduna State, Erufai, soon after Muhammad Buhari came into office. They made recommendations. Those recommendations are there collecting dust. So this country is notoriously known for conducting investigations, doing reports that they have no intention of implementing. So that is my fear. My fear is that there will be an investigation. The investigation will be done haphazardly. And even as haphazardly done as it is, the report won't be made public. And the recommendations will not be implemented. And so 1 year from now, 1 month from now, 2 years, we'll be back to where we are again.
Femi, let me just quickly butt in here. My apologies again. Well, we're just trying to manage the time here. Femi, you know very well who Nuhu Ribadu is, the NSA. He's a man of no nonsense, even while he was with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Don't you think that this time around, this investigation, since he has said it, will see the light of day?
If Ribadu wants to be who he was before and who he wants to be now, I think he should just be open and be honest to himself that yes, he's got to carry out a very robust investigation. But however, there are certain ways you can actually carry out this investigation without spending a dime on anything at all. One of the key factors I want to put out there is this: use the youngest brains that we have within the criminology students and the military and let them carry out a very thoughtful one for you. But without that, it is not going to happen. Why I'm saying this is this: I have been in touch with so many young, talented students in Nigeria, in criminology, and I can tell you they are so brilliant that they can do the best job for Nigeria. But the question is this, and this is the question of the day. Are we getting the youths involved in what is going on in Nigeria today? The answer to that is no, we're not. Ribadu himself, being the NSA holder and the chairman there, tell me how many places he's actually visited in Nigeria after assuming office, apart from Abuja. Has he been to all these places? Does he even have offices in all the states? That, you know what, today or this month, I'm going to be in Ondo State. Next month, I'm going to be in Lagos State. This month, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. So that he himself can understand what security situation is like in each state. Yes, I know he's got a lot to do, but he's been given this mandate, he's been given this office, and he needs an ought to run it very well, effectively. And the only way is this: just don't believe in reports given to you. Go out there and get your own facts yourself. That is why you're there. He's a young chap, and he should be able to deliver well. That is all I can say for now.
Bish, you think that he should have offices around the country, or should perhaps going digital might help?
No, it's not necessary for him to have offices around the country. Understand what his job is. He's the National Security Advisor to Mr. President. So his job is here in Abuja. But his own is to connect all the other, components of our security apparatus and bring them into one place where a centralized decision is made. So having, duplication of offices around the country would be very, very wasteful. That money should rather be channeled into, training and equipping those security agencies that are already in place.
Bishop, just like
he
I
doesn't
said,
need to have people.
No, Bishop, I'm going to cut in there. I'm not just saying that you should have offices whereby they're going to spend money on buildings. All I can say is this: let him have a way of walking around physically himself to each state to understand all this, rather than having buildings and equipments in each offices. There are ways people work these days, and they work effectively. So why can't the NSA do the same as well? We can't be wasteful all the time or believing in reports given to us. We want to see firsthand what is going on. We know Abuja is the place to be.
We have a little bit of a network situation here. It's been raining in Lagos, and that's understandable. But Femi Oluwafemi Aratokunwale, a security expert, as well as Bish Johnson, that will be Bishop Johnson in full, a security analyst as well. They've been talking to us about the Kaduna bombings. They promised by the National Security Advisor that this will be investigated and it won't be another case being swept under the carpet. Gentlemen, I do sincerely thank you for giving us your time and your thoughts on this very critical security issue that has plagued Nigeria over the past week plus. I am Gimba Umar, and thank you for watching. Join us again next time.